We're here and we're ready to cover another news week. We have some interesting news events ahead, so let's get right into it. Today is Monday, December 5th, and the U.S. had ISM Services PMI numbers come out better than expected at 56.5. This means the U.S. business industry is continuing to expand, which is overall good for economic health. Australia's new interest rate numbers come out tonight in the U.S., so we'll be sure to update you on that first thing tomorrow morning. Speaking of Tuesday, Australia will also release new GDP numbers, so based off these two Australian news events, we could definitely see a swing in the markets and some potential trade opportunities. On Wednesday, Canada is also coming out with new interest rate numbers, and Thursday, the US is releasing unemployment claims. Wrapping up this week, we have PPI numbers for the US on Friday morning, so be sure to keep coming back as we keep you updated on all the latest news and numbers and compare them to what the Edge Finder has. Alright, so here we are inside of the Edge Finder, taking a look at the Scorechart Summary, and Mondays are my favorite day to do news videos because I love to see how much things have shifted or changed since Friday. Although I can see, just getting right into it, that our New Zealand dollar pairs are still up at the top and the bottom. We just cannot escape the New Zealand dollar. If we want to get rid of these neutral scores here, we can see just 4 sells, 3 strong sells, of course, New Zealand dollar pairs, and then of course we also have our New Zealand dollar pairs up here towards the top. So kind of hoping that we would have some newer pairs up towards the top or the bottom, but that is not really the case. I mean, CHF JPY is up kind of near towards the top. USD CAD has a score of +3, so does Aussie CAD, so that's not terrible. Are you trying to find a broker or feel like you need a better one? In the description below, you'll find the link to fill out our broker match form. After answering a few easy questions, our team will reach back out to you with a personalized broker recommendation. Try it for free in the description below. And then we have some leaning towards buys here, some leaning towards sells here with the +2 and -2 scores. But we have to figure out what the best thing to take a look at is. I mean, we're definitely going to take a look at an Australian dollar pair tomorrow because of the news events with interest rates and GDP in Australia coming out tomorrow. So that'll be definitely a big day for the Australian markets. But today I'm thinking maybe just NZD USD. It's up towards the top with a strong, not a strong buy, but almost a strong buy score with a +5. And it's always good to get an update on the US dollar numbers going into the week. And this could be a good pair to potentially go long on. So let's find out. Like I mentioned, we have a buy bias here, score of +5. COT data comes out to a score of -1, and retail sentiment a score of +1. So we can take a look at those numbers over here under our sentiment section. US dollar pretty heavily favored on the long side, 75.06% from the institutional traders and 24.94% on the short side. So definitely leaning towards the long side here, whereas the New Zealand dollar 44.09% long and 55.91% short. So not a heavy bias one way or the other. I mean, we're very, very slightly favored on the short side here. However, not really enough to consider it being favored one way or the other because it's practically 50-50 here. Retail traders on the other side, our retail sentiment is 23% long, 77% short. So retail traders having no trouble making up their mind there, 77% short. Our seasonality comes out to a score of +1. We can see here that historically speaking, in the last 10-year average, in the last 5-year average, this pair tends to do better in the month of December, coming out or finishing out stronger than it came in at. And we can see that that is consistent so far with our current year average. And that was also the case last month as well. If we take a look at the month of December, we can see that this pair, again, historically speaking, finishes out pretty strong as it closes out the end of the month. And that was certainly the case here, as we can tell by our current year average. And that so far is the case in the month of December as well. Looking at our trend reading, we have a score of +2, meaning that this market has been pretty strongly moving in an upward direction. And that's pretty clear to see here. A little bit of consolidation here maybe for a few days, but breaking through that and continuing on to the upside with our price forecast pointing this towards the upside as well. So we could potentially see more upward momentum for this pair moving forward. Lastly, our GDP growth, inflation, unemployment, and interest rates comes out to scores of -1 and then +1s down the board. And we can see here in our fundamental section that the US GDP growth currently sits at 2.9% compared to New Zealand's 1.7%. US unemployment 3.7% compared to 3.3% for New Zealand. Inflation in the US 7.7% compared to New Zealand's 7.2%. And lastly, interest rates 4% for the US and 4.25% for New Zealand. So overall, especially fundamentally speaking, things looking pretty bullish for the New Zealand dollar. The GDP growth here is the one metric where the US dollar is actually beating out the New Zealand dollar, but overall definitely bullish towards the New Zealand dollar. We can see that for the past couple of days, we've definitely had a strong upward move. Quickly before I forget, I wanted to check out the market heat map as well so that we can see how much all of our pairs have moved so far today. We can take a look at our major US pairs here. NZD USD is actually down today so far, -1.17%, so that's interesting. GBP USD also down along with Aussie USD, and USD JPY is actually up 1.41%, which is surprising because for the past couple of days, last week, at least the yen pairs were down pretty heavily. Indices so far today, our major indices pretty much all down. S&P 500, NASDAQ, US 30, German 30, all down today, where JP 225 and UK 100 are up slightly. Continuing on, wow, all of our euro pairs pretty much, except for Euro USD, which is pretty much neutral, all of our euro pairs up today. Pound pairs looking pretty split. And this is surprising to me. Our yen pairs are all up today, which is the complete opposite of what we saw last week. Swiss franc pairs looking pretty split. Australian pairs also pretty split, but we have a few good movers to the upside here. And New Zealand dollar pairs also pretty split. Now we're going to check out some stream analysis featuring TraderNick.
All right, so let's see, what are we looking at today? I want to start out with just some of the big markets. We'll take a look, for example, at the euro. The euro dollar continues to look, in terms of technical analysis, it looks bullish, right? You have some pretty clear higher lows and higher highs on this market. And if we go ahead and mark up some structure here, what you can see is that even yesterday, I'm sorry, was this yesterday? Let's see. Nope, this was the first candle of the day. We actually saw the euro dip down into a level of support and very quickly find buyers. So this thing seems to be wanting to continue higher. And that's pretty much what we're going to focus on here for the euro, is a relatively soft bullish bias. And most of this is off of dollar weakness. Here's one thing I will caution to you on the euro dollar bullish side of things, is that most of this move, in my opinion, is off of dollar weakness, not so much euro strength. And that's a very important distinguishing factor when you think about it, right? When we talk currencies, we are comparing one against the other. And you have to ask yourself, is it really the euro that's strong, or is it the dollar that's weak? And in this case, I think it's more so the dollar being weak off of recent news, cooler than expected inflation. You had the Fed or Jerome Powell speak softly on interest rate hikes. These things are causing the dollar to be weak and giving room for the euro to rise. And so until that changes, that seems to be sort of the trade. So if you're looking at this thing, we'll narrow in on the 1 hour chart now. If you're watching the euro USD off of the hourly chart this morning, what you'll notice is that we already got a pretty nice move. You caught this during London, then congratulations. This was a very nice move. You had a big pop to the upside, right? And then pulled back here during the London session, found buyers right around this previous level of resistance, turned support, and shot off of the area. So for me, if you're looking at this thing, you may get a second chance, right? So if price does come back into this area, until this structure breaks, I would consider this a buy zone. So let's go ahead and mark that just so you guys, I would say buy zone right around here. Okay. So at this point, I would say that even a retest in this area looks to be like a possible opportunity on the long side. Now, of course, stop loss placement, all that sort of stuff is very, very important as well. So let's talk about that. Let's say you get price retesting this area. Where does the stop loss go? Well, we could tighten this up a little bit and just talk about some of the support here, right? That little wick there could be a nice spot to put a stop below, right? Give it a little bit of distance so we're not too tight on the stop. Something like this, right? So this would just be a euro dollar bias that I have going forward. Now, of course, I don't love euro dollar on the fundamental side too much, but just from my momentum perspective with the dollar being weak, I would say, this is a scenario to perhaps look out for if you are watching the euro dollar. This thing looks bullish until further notice, until it shows signs. Maybe you're a bear. What's the bearish case, Nick? Well, the bearish case for me would be if this idea comes into play and completely fails and we start doing the opposite effects, then we might discuss bearish setups on the stream. But right now, this is a market that tends to be rising, and that is the bias. Okay. Someone requested pound USD. Let's take a look at the pound dollar here today and see what's going on with the pound. So we'll start fresh on this chart and talk a little bit about recent price action. So recent price action, very, very bullish as well, similar to the euro dollar. And we could take a quick look at the dollar, right? The dollar has actually, we'll come back to the pound in just a second. The pound being strong is partially due to the fact that the dollar is incredibly weak, right? So you had a level of support here that completely fell apart and resistance took over, sellers came in and even retested this area before shooting back down to the downside. So when we look at something like the euro dollar and the pound dollar, these things are generally speaking benefiting from that dollar weakness, right? And so when we look at this, again, we can start doing our markups and we could say, well, let's say you want to buy the pound. If you want to buy the pound, where's the location on the chart? Well, on the 4-hour chart, you're probably waiting until you get a dip back down to here, which by the way is probably a 38.2. It sure is 38.2. So what this means, you guys, is that your job, if you're, let's say you came up to this conclusion, you say, okay, I'll give you my example. My job in this case is if I want to buy this thing, but I don't want to buy it until it gets down to the 38.2, my job from here to here is to do absolutely nothing, right? And so this is an important distinction for traders. Sometimes your job as a trader is to do absolutely nothing. Hey, Nick, can you review gold? Hey, Caleb, how are you? I will do gold for sure. We'll take a look at that. What's your thoughts on the euro? I mentioned we talked about the euro dollar a little bit. We might discuss more euro pairs as we go along. Gold, please. We'll take a look at gold. Don't worry. I don't look at the cloud stuff very much. It's not my style. Not to say that it can't be your style. I just not what I do. I like simple market structure, support and resistance, price action. These things have worked very well for me over my years as a trader. It's not something that I need to look much further than. If you find something that works for you in trading, that's hard enough. So if you find something, I've just been sticking to what works for me for several years now. You take a look at the NASDAQ. Hey, Emmanuel, thank you for tuning in. Yeah, let's take a look at some equities markets in a little bit. Let's continue our thought process on the pound dollar. So again, we marked up our chart and we said, hey, possible interest on the long side, if and only if we get down to that 38.2. Until it gets there, nothing to do here. Does that make sense? Type yes in the chat if you understand that concept. Do some self-affirmation, if you will. Type yes if you agree with the idea. Okay, we need to wait for the market to come to you. It is a very important skill to learn. You look at the charts, you're like, I got 30 minutes to trade. Let's get some trades going, right? But professional traders know that you don't just take a trade just because you want to take a trade. You take a trade when it sets up and when the odds are best in your favor. Okay, thank you guys for the yeses in the chat. I appreciate you. So let's keep going. I would like to take a look at the Edge Finder here, see what's going on in terms of bias here today. So this is going to be our watch list. So we've got NZD pairs still on top. US 30 actually coming in as a pretty strong buy and dipping here this morning might be a setup for me. The NZD crosses, I just closed out of my Euro NZD trade. I need to discuss this. We did close out of Euro NZD. I'm out of the trade, hit my stop loss this morning for a profit. In fact, let's go look. We'll go scout out my position and see what has happened. So here's my recent trade, closed out for $1,747.76. So we're out of that Euro NZD trade. So for you guys who have been watching the streams, we're out. Nice little profit there. You got the money tree raining. Thank you for that on the producer side. We got it going on. It's a nice trade to start the week. Sure, it was at one point floating like $2,500, but we trailed stops here. We followed the rules, and again, it's a profitable trade. There's nothing sold, right? It's sold. So nice little start to the week. I love these graphics, by the way. That's shout out to the producers who make this show so awesome. All right, so let's see, what else can we find? So we have a couple people asking about gold. So let's talk about gold for a moment. Euro NZD, I love this pair. Beautiful trade. Ended up shorting here, covering back here. I've had a lot of success with this trade, or a lot of success with this pair over time, and I do tend to really like the Euro pairs. So we might come back to this one. This might be another setup here later in the week. Another entry might be something to look at around 1.66. Yeah, so we'll keep tabs on that.
Make sure you guys check out the links in the description if you need broker recommendations, access to our free Discord, or want to chat with us on Telegram. If you're interested in our trading software, the Edge Finder, you can find that in the description as well. Thanks for watching.